Hey everybody, this is Joe. I was going through my Flickr stream the other day. I was just looking for some image and I knew it was a few years back on my Flickr history. And as I was sifting through all these photos, I came across some that I forgot about. And that is these little gems. I have built the little pinhole camera, a set of 9 of these little film canister pinhole cameras that shoot Harman direct positive paper, original one-of-a-kind little images in a film canister camera. And it reminded me how cool this camera was, and I broke the camera out from the darkroom where I had it stored at, and I decided I was going to do a little upgrade to it. So let me reintroduce this whole camera kit to you and show you what the idea is I have for making a little bit of improvements to it. So I have a whole bunch of these old 35mm slide storage sheets. And I had this idea a few years ago for making a pinhole camera that would take little, I think these are 1 3/4 inch square images that you could easily fit inside of a slide protective sleeve. And the way I've done it is I have the image here, and then I have a little informational sheet of paper next to it that gives you the stuff pertaining to the exposure or whatnot on the camera. So I really like this idea, and I figured out that I could use 35mm film canisters for the camera itself. Well, so you might be aware that there are different kinds of 35mm film canisters. There's the translucent white kind that you commonly see Fujifilm packed in. Obviously those aren't going to work as a pinhole camera because they're not light tight. You have the black kind. The classic Kodak ones have a gray cap, and then this is, I believe, Ilford. It has a slightly different style cap, but a little flange like that. And what I've done is I made up 9 of these cameras. Down at near the bottom of the camera, which is where the lid is, there is this little cardboard ring that's taped to it, and that's just to keep the shutter from slipping down. The shutter is this little ring of plastic that is taped together with gaffer's tape, and there is a little securing tab of gaffer's tape. If you peel it off like that, you can raise the shutter up to expose the pinhole. Then you lower it down. The cardboard ring on the bottom keeps it from going too far down, and that secures it. There is a little label on the top that tells you what camera it is, and then the rattly sound inside, there is a strong little disc magnet that just sits in the bottom. Let me show you why I have magnets. So I figured I was going to use a metal plate. This is a cover for a wall outlet, and it is steel or some kind of low-grade ferrous material, but magnets will stick to it, and I have it mounted to a piece of plywood that I have spray painted silver, and I have a 1/4 blind nut in the bottom of this piece of plywood, so this mounts to a tripod. And then this presents a mounting plate where you can stick the camera here and point it in whatever direction you want, and then you can aim your camera, your little pinhole camera. You can put this plate on a tiny little pocket-sized tripod or tabletop tripod, or use a big tripod if you want. But anyway, the idea was you could put the camera along the edge of the plate, and then you could aim it however you want to. And I had built a little storage box out of cardboard and gaffer's tape that holds 9 of these cameras. And so the idea is you preload the cameras with 9 little squares of Harman direct positive paper, preload them in the darkroom. You have the cameras labeled 1 through 9 on the lid, and as you use each camera, the way you track the exposure is, for instance, you start with camera number 1. If you use up camera 1, that is to say if you've exposed it, you simply flip it backwards in the box like that, and now you can kind of tell that, oh, I'm ready for shot number 2, and you go through like that. You'll notice there are little red dots on the lid of the camera, and that dot simply lines up with the pinhole, so you can tell how to aim the camera itself. And all of these shots that I did back in, what date is this? This is 2016, May of 2016 roughly, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. All of these shots I did with this 9 camera system, and I enjoyed it. And then of course, you know, I go off into other things, other things of interest and I just kind of forget about it, which now my interest has been resurrected and I have an idea for how I might improve the system. So the way the system currently is, you have two components. You have the mounting plate that you're going to put on your tripod and carry around, and then you have this storage box that has the cameras in it. And so it's like two different things you have to carry. You have the tripod. It may not be a big tripod, like I say. It could be a really tiny one. And then this. And you might have to set this down, or you might have to carry a little backpack or a fanny pack or something to put this in while you're dealing with the camera that's on the tripod being used. And so one of the things I was thinking about is maybe I can integrate the box and the mounting plate into one item. And one of the things I first noticed is the cameras, as they sit in the box here, in their normal orientation, the magnets are face down in the box. And so if you put the box on top of the mounting plate like this, what I noticed about it is the box actually sits magnetically on the plate itself. So the storage box is now being stored on the tripod head. But what I need is I just need a piece of metal on top of the storage box lid that I can stick the camera to. So that's what I really need. I just need a piece of thin metal, ferrous metal that'll stick to a magnet, put it on top of the box, and now my entire storage box and tripod head and magnetic mount is all in one integral unit. I can just take this off, grab a camera, close the lid, stick the camera on top, and compose and shoot my picture. Well, I have this scrap piece of galvanized steel that definitely sticks to my magnet that's inside my little camera, so I'm going to use this for the mounting plate on top of the storage box. I need to round the corners though, so they're not so sharp. And to do that, I have a hefty pair of scissors. These are Cutco scissors. I've had these for years. You want to snip off about 1/8 of an inch off the corners. And then, to round the corners, you're going to take that 45-degree bevel and split the angle and file that little corner and then that little corner. That's probably like a 22.5 degree or a 12 degree. Anyways, you file down the two corners of your 45, and that kind of rounds it, and then you want to feel for burrs, and nice and smooth on the back side. There's some burrs. Just pull it away from the center of the metal, and there you have a nice rounded corner. I'm going to go ahead and finish up the others. And then to attach the plate of metal to the top of my camera storage box, I have some of this double-sided foamy tape that I'm going to use, and that should work fine. You want to also make sure that the piece of metal is actually flat. This galvanized steel is pretty thin and it bends easy, and you just want to kind of form it so that things look pretty flat. And so, let's see, that looks like two of those. So I'll take the wide tape. It doesn't even have to be exactly the same length. It just needs to stick. And so now I have to figure out, so obviously this was just a scrap of metal. It's not the whole exact size of the lid. It's a lot smaller. I could center it on one end. I need to get it near the edge so the camera overlooks the edge, and you don't want the storage box in the picture. I also might want to put a camera on the corner, so I'm going to probably just mount this like this. So I can get a camera here, or I can put it on the corner, either way. Alright, let's just get this mounted right to the corner. Alright. Well, there it is. So in actual practice, I might have the plate mounted to the little kind of a tabletop, close to the ground kind of tripod. The box mounts to it and stays there magnetically because all the magnets in the canisters fall to the bottom of the canister, and so they're attaching themselves magnetically to the metal plate on the bottom. And I grab a camera and look at my dot for my pinhole, and I can put it either on the corner pointing outwards, or I can put it in the middle pointing outwards, however I want to do it. And there I'm set. Well, I think this comes closer to being a self-contained little camera system. I think maybe one other thing I might do is I might put a piece of plastic, like white plastic or something, or even just a piece of 2-inch packing tape, clear packing tape, put it across the bottom of this lid, and then using one of those Sanford vis-a-vis wet erase markers, I can actually mark my exposure times for the 9 cameras. I could have 9 little boxes and just mark my exposure times. And that way the notation for the exposure is built into the camera as well. So I don't have to carry anything else, just a wet erase marker pen and this and a tripod. It would all be self-contained. Here's the clear packing tape, here's the camera, here's the marker pen. Already got the tape on there, so you could just do like, I don't know, something like that. And do a little grid and have 15 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever, 8 seconds, maybe a description. This will be tree, this will be building, whatever. And then this all just wipes clean with a wet paper napkin or paper towel or whatever. So like this. Ta-da! So a brief little comment about these prints. They're 1 3/4 inch in size, and they're very small, of course. So there's certain subject matters that work good for this size image and others that don't. Like, for instance, this is a landscape image. It may not be ideally suited for 1 3/4 inch size print, just because landscapes have a lot of detail in them and you can't really see much detail at this scale. And so when you're shooting these little 1 3/4 pinhole images, you gotta have to think of the subject matter. You really want to think about isolating individual objects in the landscape and doing more like close-ups of those. For instance, this is the corner of my front of my house where the courtyard wall meets the house. That is kind of interesting. It kind of gives you that little sense of architecture and some sky there. That kind of works, right, at a small scale. Or things obviously like close-up objects, like in this example, a Hermes 3000 typewriter, the naked typewriter, or even the Green Jeans market here in Albuquerque, the container shops. They have a little tower made of stacked containers. That kind of works good. It has graphical elements to it. But in general, you want to kind of isolate individual objects that are going to be viewable at this small of a scale. Now today when I was at the craft store getting some supplies, I came across these little decorative small little glass kind of canning jar style things, and you can put one of these direct positive paper prints in the canning jar and use it as a way of displaying the image, right? It may work better with a portrait of somebody than a building like this, but that's just an example. When you do this, though, with Harman direct positive paper, be very careful when you bend this is fiber-based paper. It's rather stiff and brittle when it's dried, and so you want to carefully bend it so you don't crack the emulsion, but you can get it in there pretty easily like that. But this is just one idea for how you can present these little images. And of course take the price tag off the bottom of the jar. Anyway, so this is just a brief little video on a little upgrade to my 9 pinhole film canister kit, and how now it's all mounted as an integral unit on a tripod. And this is Joe Van Cleve, and until next time, you guys have yourselves a great day.